Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to be taking you all back to a phenomenal period in time. A time where my mind was fucked and my money was stolen from me. A period where I, a minor at the time, was taken advantage of by a group of blood-sucking corporate suits to the point where I still haven't been paid for a great deal of tracks and releases that I put out a few years ago. Now, despite the fact that on really any basis I could think of, I could just put these people on blast, expose them, put their name out there, and completely tarnish their name. I don't want to do that today, really. I don't want anybody to be harassed. I don't want any's reputation to be ruined. I'm just trying to educate you people on what not to do, especially if you're just getting into, releasing music, trying to put your music on, streaming platforms like Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Google Play Music, Deezer, whatever the fuck you want to put your music on. I'm trying to educate you guys today on the mistakes that you shouldn't make, the mistakes that I made when trying to put my music on streaming platforms. I mean, nowadays, obviously, I don't have any issues doing this. I have other methods of putting my music out there. But as far as distribution labels go, or labels in general goes, I'm gonna tell you my story today about how a certain and particular label robbed me. Now, it isn't really hard to find out what the name of this label is, because the name of, labels is under every release on almost every streaming platform. But just due to, the accessibility of knowing their name, I'm not going to feature it in this specific video, because I don't want them to be on blast too much. And the main goal of this video is not to specifically seclude this one particular record label and prevent other people and warn other people from using their service, but to avoid the general premise of what this company provided and to avoid any other companies who provide a similar service, to generally avoid the entire thing I'm going to be covering today. So I'm going to take you back to my freshman year in high school. I have a pretty lengthy background in music. I've been making music myself since 2015, and I figure, and around the year of 2017, after working on music for over 2 years at the point, I figured it was about time for me to put my music on, profitable platforms. I had a friend and a frequent collaborator, at least at the time, all the way over in the United Kingdom, and he introduced me to this label, this distribution label, and we'll just call them the music releasing label, okay? So this is not a record label. This is not a label where you get signed to an entire deal where, you're put under different contracts where you have to release X amount of records, you have to, give a portion of your masters, the record label doesn't pay for any promotion towards you. The essential premises of these distribution labels is each time you want to release something, they give you an exclusive contract for you to release one singular project or single or EP or mixtape or whatever you want to release. They give you one singular exclusive contract to release one release. You can do it as many times as you want, but each release is one individual contract. You're not under any gigantic contract for your entire discography as a whole. Now, as hard as it is to hear for younger people, especially minors specifically who don't have jobs, who can't really pay for actual distribution or, pay for the promotion to get, seen by maybe a record label, as hard as it is, it probably would have been for me to hear back then, it's not really, these distribution labels that are putting your music out for free without any charge, that simply maybe take a cut from your pay or something. These types of labels are usually very shady and usually will scam you, or at least, not really treat you the best. And I mean, with record labels, that's not a surprise, but I mean, these labels do it in kind of a different way, I guess I could say. But it's 2017. I've released several mixtapes, singles, and EPs all over SoundCloud, and I figured it's about time for me to release something on streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music. Long story short, he referred me to this record label. It didn't end up working out. A lot of it involved issues with, cover art and issues with, using other people's beats, because, when you find type beats on YouTube and you want to use them in songs, you have to get clearance and everything. And I was like, I think 15, maybe 14, 13 at the time or something. I would say like 14 or 15, and I didn't have the money to, pay all these producers for their beats. And if I haven't paid the producer for their beat, unless it's free for profit, the distribution label is not going to put my music out there, because then it's on them, and the whole legal system and legal proceedings behind that are a whole entire other avenue. So long story short, it didn't really work out. And back then I didn't produce, I didn't engineer, I didn't do anything. I just wrote songs on beats that I found maybe on YouTube, and stuff like that. I mean, I occasionally worked on beats in fucking GarageBand, but nothing even close to anything that could be usable. But I was kind of working on my craft a little bit, okay? So fast forward to 2018. Events occurred that I won't cover in this video. Maybe I'll explain at a later date, but all my material, whether it be YouTube videos, songs, albums, anything that involved myself on the internet, except for maybe like Instagram and Snapchat, I completely wiped it all, deleted it all. Everything was permanently gone. So any music I released before, I want to say October of 2018, any YouTube videos, aside from maybe one or two that I released before October of 2018, you probably won't find them. And I regret doing so. I wish I had at least, even if I still wanted to delete them, I wish I had at least privated them maybe, so I could see how I've grown. But I released, I want to say, anywhere from 5 to 10 albums before 2018, and they're all gone. And I also released somewhere around like 100 YouTube videos as well, and those are all gone. Anything before like October 2018, and I think I left like 2, but I could be wrong. I don't feel like scrolling down right now. So everything was wiped in 2018. I took an entire hiatus from creating anything in 2018, just to kind of like work on myself, focus on getting my school together or whatever, hanging with friends, whatever I was doing in 2018. It's kind of a blur for some reason, even though my memory is typically pretty good. But I took a hiatus from like the entire internet in 2018. I was kind of active on Instagram a little bit. So fast forward to 2019. This year is where I kind of get back into my passion for music. I start to produce. I actually start teaching myself to produce. I downloaded FL Studio with my very first paycheck. From my very first job. I bought the producer edition of FL Studio. Nowadays, I'm experienced with Ableton. I have, years of experience with FL Studio now. I'm learning Pro Tools. I really want to learn Logic Pro, but I don't have a Mac, shit like that. I am experienced with a few DAWs now, but, back in 2019, I began to teach myself to produce. And after a certain amount of experience with producing developed, I no longer required, beat clearances and stuff, because I could just make stuff for myself. And then I also ended up, teaching myself to engineer, mix engineering, master engineering. I even record for myself when I'm not at a studio. Obviously, I can record at home sometimes if I feel like it, and I usually do so. I don't primarily go to actual recording studios, but I have in the past. There's actually a recording studio on my college campus that I go to sometimes as well. But I began to teach myself the various different elements of releasing music, making music, composing music. I even teach myself a little bit of graphic design, and now I also make all my own cover art. I essentially, my essential goal was to become experienced, and I'm still not, but it's mostly my goal to become experienced in every aspect of the music making process, basically, was my entire goal. I even learned a variation of different instruments over the years. I learned the trumpet, trombone, percussion, the keyboard and piano, the guitar as well, and the ability to play trumpet and trombone has completely left me. I probably couldn't do that anymore, but I did learn it for like around a year, a few years ago. But, this is all besides the point. We're going to fast forward to 2020 now. I plan to release my very first commercial project, and I'm getting it together. The original idea was to release a 4-track EP. One of the tracks ended up being removed, so it was a 3-track EP. It ended up being at the very end. It had a few collaborations. I believe one track was solo, one track had one feature, and another track had 2 features, okay? And this release is still out, unfortunately. I'm unable to remove it because I have no control over it being public. So I have the urge to release this EP that I've been working on for the past few months. This is, I believe, January of 2020 when I'm thinking of releasing this thing. So I contact the music releasing label that I remembered from my freshman year. This, I believe, was my junior year now, 2 years later. when I'm now wanting to release this EP. So I contact them, we talk things through. I made my own cover art for it, so everything was chill. The process of actually getting my cover art through, though, was a bitch. I had to submit like 7 different cover arts because they wouldn't approve certain ones from before because, you know, they didn't like a fucking font or they didn't like a fucking border around an image inside the cover art or some shit. They were, you know, very precise and very nitpicky about what had to be on the cover art, and you know, they would make the excuse like, oh, Spotify wouldn't approve of this. I knew damn well Spotify would have approved of it because I've been literally studying this stuff for years. Basically how I interpreted it is they just didn't like it, so they didn't want to represent it with their label. But I eventually got everything together. I secured 3 tracks, a nice cover art that I you know, composed together. Now, since this is a distribution label, with every release that you put out, whether it be an album or a single or whatever, you have to sign like this kind of contract. Now, for some reason, this contract was in the form of a Google form, and you essentially typed your name at the very end. Kind of unprofessional, but I mean, what are you gonna do in the days of, you know, like early COVID and stuff? So I kind of gave it a pass. I signed their little fucking waiver or whatever, but this release had nothing to do with, you know, payment or anything. It mentioned payment, nothing in there. And when I asked them about it, they said that payment would come another time. They would, you know, talk to me about payment another time, and there would be like a fucking team that would consult me about payment another time. And I want to say it was either January or February. I don't remember which one. But it was either January or February where I submitted this EP, right? And I want you to keep in mind, this is an important fact here, that this EP that I wanted to release had features from 3 people on it. And not only did it have features from 3 people on it, but this was from a time where I was still learning to produce, but I didn't fully know how to produce for myself that well, at least on a consistent basis yet. Like, I was releasing type beats on YouTube, but for the exact vision of the tracks I wanted to make, I didn't really have the integrity to make a lot of the more advanced stuff. So I would use like a few melodies that I found on the internet, maybe, or like a bass line, or, you know, maybe like a drum loop or something. I would incorporate different, you know, loops sometimes if I wanted to sample things. And whenever I did so, I wanted to make sure that the artists that worked on these loops were paid. So I would contact them, I would inform them and ask them if I had permission to use it, while also giving them a cut of the pay from the song when it released. And yeah, so a few months go by, and you know, they haven't released my EP. So I asked them, you know, like, what's going down? Why isn't the EP released? And they said, oh, we're just contacting the stores. In reality, people, it takes, I want to say, in between like a day to a week for Apple Music to post something. It takes in between 3 days to 2 weeks for Spotify to post something. And that's like at its slowest. This service I was using had taken like 3 months, but that's just like a gripe. That has nothing to do with the actual story. So they post my album, and I'm like, well, you posted the album already, so how am I going to get paid for the streams? You know, because when an album drops, I'm announcing it. The labels, the distribution labels, announcing it, telling everybody to go stream. The majority of the streams are going to come, at least at bulk, when you release it, because some people might be waiting. If you have fans, I had like 2 fans at the time. I wasn't even on YouTube that much. I had like 70 subscribers on YouTube when this thing released. So I mean, there was like around 10 people. Mostly people who listened to like the other artists that were featured on the album. There were people ready when this thing dropped. And so I'm like, how am I going to get paid for, you know, because I didn't know how the streams worked back then. So I'm like, how am I going to get paid for, you know, these streams that I'm allocating right now, that I'm building up right now. And, you know, they basically brushed me off. And they say, oh, you'll sign a payment contract whenever. You can give us your PayPal email address right now, but that won't really, you know, do anything. That'll just have it in my contact information. And at the time, being a minor, I didn't have a PayPal, because I want to say like 16 or something, maybe 15. I didn't have a PayPal at the time. My EP had gotten like 100-something plays. I mean, in money terms, you know, Spotify pays artists horribly, as you can see. But, you know, I had generated like a few bucks, like literally, like maybe like $5, at least at the time. And I consult them, like, it's been a few months. I have a PayPal email address now. Can I, you know, start going through the payment, giving you my payment information so I can, you know, get my money from this release? And what they essentially told me about the payment process is they take 30%, 70% goes to the artist, and is divided between the artist and, you know, whatever features are there, but the label gets a dead set 30% on, you know, whatever releases you may put out. And another thing they tell me is that in order to receive the payment, your release has to break a 100 play threshold every month. And mine was. I mean, that's still dumb as fuck, right? Because, I mean, if somebody gets like 99 plays or like 50 plays every month and is allocating all these plays, they're never gonna get fucking paid. But luckily mine managed to. And it would consistently break this threshold every month. Still does, by the way. Still does. And spoiler alert, I still haven't gotten paid. And so what they tell me is that a separate team will essentially handle that for me. They will contact me from a separate team that will, you know, handle the payment information. And from what I gathered from this was probably just one, like, motherfucker in his basement in, like, Iran. But, you know, I just said fuck it. So I had to inflate everything on this page just to block out some of the fucking information. But again, this is not hard to find. I mean, the link's on the screen. But anyways, so yeah, this released the 30th of May. Okay, 30th of May 2020. It was supposed to release in fucking February, but what fucking ever. It's a month off, okay? So if we look right here, this month, I say, this is July, okay? This is July, several months after this project releases, okay? Say, hey there, I've just now started my PayPal account. Would it be possible to set up a payment method for the EP now? They say, hey, the legal team will initiate that on the next payment cycle. So I'm like, fuck. Bet. This is July, keep in mind. A month goes by, almost. It's August 10th. I say, hey, has the next payment cycle began yet? Because if you don't know, payment cycles begin and end within a month. They're monthly payment cycles, right? The next payment cycle began yet, he says, and if not, could you tell me when? It's a little hard to say. COVID may delay payment cycle from what the DSP said. However, we believe it should be quite normal by September. Now, this is September of 2020 that they're referring to. Did they pay me in September of 2020? No. They actually didn't contact me whatsoever. And to the best of my knowledge, unless they like sent something and unsent it within a fucking nanosecond, they have not consulted me about payment at one singular time since. It is now over a year since this conversation took place, about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And yeah, I'm still empty-handed. So little did I know that this motherfucker was basically capping harder than Anne Frank in the 1940s. But regardless, I'm going to open this nice calculator here. And I'm going to calculate, ladies and gentlemen, how much these motherfuckers owe me in streaming revenue. It's not going to be a lot, but I'm still going to bitch about it, because the main premise of this thing isn't that I didn't get paid. It's that there are so many motherfuckers that they're not paying. Just think about the insane amount of money that is added up from all the different artists that they operate over, and all the money that they've robbed people of. And not to mention the features and the artists and the, you know, collaborating producers that also didn't get paid for any of their work that was featured on my EP either. Because to this day, they have not been paid either, to the best of my knowledge at least. But anyways, I'm gonna stop ranting. So across all platforms, it looks like they owe me like anywhere in between $100 and $200. Like I said, the main premise is everybody they fucked over and how that adds up in the end. And that was the last time I've ever let another human being touch my own music, really. I mean, nowadays I do all my own releases. I started my own little releasing collective back in 2017, but when it was created, we didn't have the resources to put things on like Apple Music and stuff, but now we do. You know, I've also found, you know, membership in Madman Studios, they also distribute things too. I've used DistroKid on the occasion too. But I mean, I guess in the end, I emerged with a W. We started YFS Audio. We now own, a couple podcasts. We signed a few artists, and a artist girl. I guess signed is a generous word, but we operate in collaboration, I guess, along with like another rap group. So I mean, all things considered, I mean, I guess it's a good learning experience. But yeah, I did get fucking robbed. I mean, I haven't gotten paid, and that the amount that I said, they owe me is just the amount that they owe me now. That amount will gain and grow larger and larger until the day I die, really. Even after I die, they'll probably still be making money off of my fucking streams. But I mean, that's just one release. What I did end up doing is just putting the 3 songs that were on the EP at the end of the next album I released and I released it via a different distribution service that actually is, trustworthy. So I'm getting, money for that release and those songs anyways, but just not specifically the EP I released back then. But the same songs are on another album that I'm getting money for. And that's literally, it's funny because that's literally the only reason I put it on that album, was just to kind of tell the other label to get fucked and to go fuck themselves. So yeah, you guys can eat shit. You guys took an L. But yeah, anyways, I know I probably shouldn't have said that because I don't think I'm allowed to do that. But I mean, I was a minor at the time of signing the contract, so it's whatever. I don't even think I legally could have signed the contract. But anyways, people, yeah, take that as a learning experience because, again, the premise of this is all the people that they've probably robbed. And I mean, I'd like to directly bring awareness to that by, mentioning them and stuff, but, their legal team might come after me. But, in all seriousness, no, in all seriousness, I don't like to blow people up. I don't like to, I mean, no matter what, I don't condone the harassment of people, but I know mentioning people can cause harassment sometimes. And again, I mean, in the 0.0000001% chance that this was all like a mistake or a misunderstanding, in that event, I definitely wouldn't want anybody to, be harassed or anything like that, or for anybody's reputation to be ruined. But anyways, people, don't use, if you're a minor, if you don't have a job, if you don't have any way to pay for your, music to be put out there, my best advice to you is to, just work on your craft, work on mastering your craft, maybe grow a name on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or something. And just work on your stuff. Make sure that, once you are able to financially release stuff on Bandcamp, because, I pay a yearly subscription for my stuff to be on Spotify and Instagram, and luckily, the music pays off that fee. For some people, I don't know if it does, but my best advice to you is to just work on, mastering your craft to the point where once you are able to put it on, streaming platforms, once you get a job or are becoming an adult or whatever, once you get to that point, if you have been working on it for that long, then your music will be a lot better. It'll be ready for streaming platforms. Maybe you can either work on engineering your stuff, or you can hire other people to engineer your stuff once you're ready to put things on streaming platforms. And streaming platforms is when you're younger, when you're when you're in like high school and you're just one of those SoundCloud kids, streaming services seems like a surreal thing. But nowadays, when you're older, it's kind of just it's a standard, really. It's a standard for getting your name out there, because people. Harsh reality is people don't blow up on SoundCloud anymore. This isn't the days of Lil Peep and fucking Lil Pump and XXX and everything like that. But yeah, that's my fucking story for today, people. I got robbed. They haven't paid me for shit, and they can suck my fat cock. I guess I'll see you all in the next video. Sorry I have not been uploading lately. And here's to 2,000 subs if I ever make it. Hope you all have a good one.